To provide more transparency, increase competition and liquidity in the foreign exchange market, the National Bank of Georgia is carrying out a reform that will come into force on October the 1st, 2020. The reform includes two components: introducing the International Currency Code, launching BMG platform of Bloomberg.
Georgia will allocate about 40 million lari for Tbilisi Infectious Disease Hospital, announces Prime Minister of Georgia, Giorgi Gakharia. According to the Prime Minister, the money will be spent to build a new hospital or purchase a new building.
Domestic flights will be resumed in Georgia after a 4-month pause, and in total 6 flights in the direction of Mestia-Natakhtari, 5 flights in the direction of Tbilisi-Batumi, and 3 flights in the direction of Ambrolauri-Natakhtari will be implemented from July 24th to 31st. Ticket costs remain the same in order to support domestic tourism.
Low-cost airlines Ryanair and Wizz Air will not fly in Georgia from August, Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development Natia Turnava reports. According to her, there will be no regular flights from Georgia in August except Paris, Munich and Riga. The minister confirmed that those airlines demanded high frequency of flights in Georgia, which was rejected by the government due to the epidemiological situation.
And Switzerland has opened borders for Georgia starting today, says the Embassy of Switzerland in Georgia. However, the decision may change depending on the epidemiological situation in Georgia. Georgia remains on the European Union's update list of countries for which travel restrictions should be lifted.
Fines will be increased for violation of parking rules in Tbilisi, Tbilisi Mayor Gahak Aladze said during the city governmental sitting. Based on changes, parking at taxi parking sites for other transport means will be fined by 50 lari instead of 10 lari. Citizens will be allowed to leave their cars parked and unattended for no longer than 3 months. If a person pays the fine within 10 days term, the amount of the fine will be reduced by 20%.
And businesses operating in the country paid 32.6 million Georgian lari in profit tax last month, which was 42.1 million Georgian lari, or 56% less compared to the same period of 2019. The State Treasury reports, according to the department, decline is related to the COVID-19 crisis. It's Sunday and this is Checkpoint, and we start our show with the latest news directly from London Stock Exchange. Georgia Capital plc announces that the holding company of the group's water utility business and the operational renewable energy assets, called GGU, has successfully priced an inaugural $250 million green bond offering on 23rd of July 2020.
The regulation S Rule 144A senior unsecured US-denominated 7.75% green notes with a 5-year non-call 2-year bullet maturity are expected to settle on July 30, 2020. The notes are being issued and sold at par value. The proceeds of the notes will be used to refinance all existing loan arrangements of GGU and to finance capital expenditures in the water supply and sanitation business. The notes are expected to be listed on the global exchange market of the Irish Stock Exchange and to be rated B+ stable by Fitch and B positive by Standard & Poor's.
GGU obtained a second-party opinion from Sustainalytics, a leading provider of environmental, social and governance (ESG) research and analysis for its green bond framework. JP Morgan acted as sole book runner, green structuring agent and development finance structuring agent of the notes, and TBC Capital acted as co-manager. Freshfields, Brookhouse, DeRanger LLP and Baker & McKinsey LLP acted as legal advisors to JP Morgan and GGU respectively. The issuance was supported by the long-standing partners and existing lenders of GGU, DEG and FMO together with Asian Development Bank. Irakli Gilauri, Chairman and CEO of GCAP, commented, "I'm delighted to announce that GGU has issued the first ever green notes from Georgia. The transaction was met with considerable interest from investors, demonstrating once again our superior access to capital even during the current unprecedented times. The issuance of the bonds significantly improves the financial flexibility of GGU and also enhances its liquidity profile, contributing to the healthy growth of the businesses. I also want to thank DG, FMO and ADB, our long-standing partners, for acting as anchor investors for the notes." And we proceed with the latest tendencies in the tourism sector in cooperation with our trusted partner TBC Research. First point, the expected occupancies for July are up on the back of domestic tourism. From current bookings toward occupancies for large hotels in Tbilisi stand at 4%, at 13% for seaside, 16% for the other regions, and Kakheti as for 28%.
Yes, even in small hotels, Kakheti leads the grid with 22%, followed by 13% in seaside resorts and 10% for other regions. What caught my eye here, Georgi, is that starting from August, most of the bookings are made by foreigners pre-COVID. With continuous border closures, these bookings are expected to be cancelled, some replaced by new bookings by local visitors. To draw them, larger hotels offer more sizable average daily rate ADR discounts ranging from 30 to 45% for different regions. However, as a single category, the small seaside hotels offer the highest discounts, averaging at -50% year on year. Occupancy is expected to recover in 2022 to 2019 levels, while price is expected to still remain lower compared to 2019.
And with the current ADR discounts at hand, the importance of retaining other revenues rises. For the last 30 days, income from bars and restaurants as well as other revenues of hotels displayed only -60% year-over-year decline, showing a faster recovery. The recovery is more visible in regions, -68% current, close to Tbilisi, or in popular summer destinations. As for Tbilisi, the spending here is close to zero. Hotel average daily rate, ADR in USD, average occupancy, and average revenue per available room are expected to decrease by 30%, 80%, and 85% year to year in 2020 respectively.
Yes, Georgi, let's see what are some of the sectors that banks are willing to finance and what are the current tendencies we're looking at, especially in terms of interest rates on different types of loans, since the study we will be talking about in a few minutes identifies those sectors that may be more attractive for banks and FDI.
To start with interest rates in May 2020, interest rate for business loans in lari amounted to 12.3%, while a foreign currency it's 6.8%. Total amount of loans issued for companies in Georgia lari was 341.5 million. If we look at sectors, we'll see that in May again the education sector benefited from the lowest interest rate up to 10.5%. The highest interest rate target transport and telecommunication sectors up to 13.2%.
Thank you, Georgi, for mentioning specific sectors. If we look at last 5 to 10 years in loans in this particular sector that you have mentioned, namely transport and telecommunications, the average interest rate here was 13.9%. However, we have to say that in the last 5 years, this rate shows a declining tendency. The biggest decline compared to 2011-2015 in interest rates, of course, is in the agriculture sector, amounting to 13.9%, mostly and most probably due to different types of subsidies as well, mainly from Enterprise Georgia and its programs. The education sector that you have also mentioned in the one that seems to have benefited the least from declining interest rates on loans.
Elena, now let me thank you for this focused analysis, and let us look at the sectors that seem to be more appealing for banks for issuing loans. Trade and industry leads the way all these 10 years. Share of trade in total loans is 33.7% on average, and in case of industry it's 21.7%. In the last 5 years, the share of trade in total loans has declined the most, followed by construction, industry and education sectors, which also show declines. Looking at total loans, the share of education is just how percent. On the other hand, we can clearly see that HoReCa and agriculture sectors show growth of shares in total loans amounting to 1.4 and 2.3% respectively.
Yes, speaking of interest rates, one more tendency here worth mentioning is that loans that are issued in local currency are short-term as usual, and longer-term lending by banks is more denominated in foreign currency. One of the explanations of this tendency can be that expectations for lari stability are lower than that of foreign currency, and risks are balanced by short-term lending, which is also more expensive.
So to summarize, we have short-term lending in lari. The main borrower from financial sector is trade and industry, and interest rates both on local and foreign currency lending are coming down. Is that a full picture?
Yes, Georgi, you are very true. The only concern here is that the share of trade and industry in total GDP is much less than the loans given out by this sector, and this tendency is with us for the last 10 years.
So that's why let us focus on different angle and see what are some strategic approaches that the potential that Georgia has in these sectors and beyond.
Sure, Georgi, but before we watch your interview with Ottari Sharikadze, head of Galt and Taggart, let us briefly summarize what their study says first.
Yes, and let's start with the areas where Galt and Taggart sees production potential. Pipeline of public and private projects in the construction sector is estimated from 20 to 25 billion over 2020 and 2025, making this sector very attractive in these terms. As for specific products, the emphasis is mainly on wires and cables, electric water heaters, rebars, articles of iron and steel, plastic materials, wood materials, paints, furniture, ceramic products, and cement clinker. According to Galt and Taggart Securities, about 450 million USD of imports can be replaced by local production.
Another main question that arises from COVID-19 reality is in which sectors to attract FDI. According to UNCTAD, FDI is expected to fall by 40% in 2020 globally, and for the first time in 15 years, FDI will fall below US dollars 1 trillion USD. The largest decline in FDI will be observed in developing countries. In the context of COVID-19, rearrangement of supply chains, Galt and Taggart sees textile, apparel and leather manufacturing, also manufacturing of automobiles and auto parts, production of pharmaceuticals and other chemical products, manufacturing of home electronics, transport and logistics, and business process outsourcing as the most luring, appealing sectors for FDI.
Yeah, and now we can definitely watch Mr. Sharikadze. He has to say, in addition of all of this, what we just delivered together with Elena. Otar, many thanks for being with us. So from the very beginning, about the purpose of the survey, it's been decided before through the pandemic, but generally, what was the purpose of it?
First of all, thanks for inviting me, having me here. It's my first time, so very glad to be here. As for the survey itself, actually, we've been thinking about the survey for a while now. I mean, it wasn't triggered really by the COVID, because we've been seeing the structure of Georgian economy moving towards service-oriented industry, whereby we saw that main part of the economy was generated by services, around 78% is generated by service-driven industries. And we saw that the export base was not growing that fast. So basically, we saw that around 12% of GDP is only export. And as we mentioned during the last event, there has been always discussion that where was this all money going, because we saw this huge influx of money driven by tourism, remittances, and we realized that there was a part of this money which was going back to buy imports. So our analysis showed that around 100% out of $100 spent by each tourist in Georgia, around $60 went on import.
Which means that from 3.3 billion
Only
US dollars generate
billion stayed
in
in
2019.
Yeah.
Is that, and you consider that, I mean, model itself, of the existing model of Georgian economy, is tricky, problematic. How do you evaluate? I mean, this is the existing situation. It's not just because export is not growing as fast as you see. It's different.
You know, I think
pandemic was a bit reason to think twice about some.
It was triggered. It accelerated certain things. I think I would say that Georgia needed to come to this point. We wouldn't have been able to have this discussion without having this tourism industry, which was booming throughout the years, and without getting to the point where we are today. So at some point, I think we need to have a kind of staircase growth, whereby we'll grow at some point, then we'll stabilize, and then we'll grow again. So I think time has come to review the model, because throughout the last 10 years, we saw a huge growth. And we see that this growth will continue, but we cannot retain all this value in the country because we are import oriented. That's why I think we need to change certain things in our growth model. We don't say that we need to completely change it, because tourism should stay. Definitely this will be 4 years, and I hope this will be 4 years our growth driver, but we should use more effectively resources gained from this industry base.
You've been working, I mean, Galt and Dakar team been working in tightly connected with governmental offices as well. At the same time, during the panel, I was honored again to moderate the representatives of the state-owned agency producing Georgia. They mentioned about various directions that has been already implemented. Where do you see major changes, let me say so, whenever or whatever is implemented from their own, and what is fixed within your survey?
Well, I would say that from the beginning, I mean, we started working on the survey quite early, and we started communicating with the government on these issues. We had a number of meetings, we exchanged certain information. I wouldn't say that this triggered all their moves afterwards, but partly I think this was something which approved from our side as well, that they needed to change something in their structure, whereby they understood that they needed much more larger support to the existing industry. There is one thing when you start looking for additional FDI in the country, but another thing supporting existing business. Our report is split in two parts. One part is saying that we should assist existing Georgian companies. This is very important, because during the panel, I think one of our panelists mentioned something very important, that you can bring new companies, but those new companies will talk to existing companies. So I think we need to have a very strong and very well supported existing Georgian companies in order to be able to be successful in attracting new ones. So I think this was very important, that they enlarged a bit their criteria of selection. They enlarged the budget as well, and they understood that at this moment, we need funding the industry should not stop. The economy should continue rolling, and we needed funding for this. I think this is the first step they've done quite well and quite fast. The other step is trying to attract FDI. In this regard, I know that they are working on a large list of companies, and this will take time, obviously. But I think that it shouldn't be only government entities doing this. There should be a broader strategy of the company. I think the important thing, and from the case studies that we've looked through, be it Ireland, Serbia, Poland, Estonia, these moves or these successful cases have been kind of very well communicated, not only internally in the country, but globally. And this has been kind of supported by existing Georgian businesses. We should all buy this story, and we should all together sell this story to the market. We won't be able to just one by one.
And it's not the government who
not only the
voices
government, exactly, because there is one thing when government officials tells you good things about the country. There is another thing when it's supported by the business sector itself. So I think it's very important, this tandem of, on one hand, government officials doing their job, but on the other hand, this being supported by private sector.
Concrete and separate directions within the agriculture, also production of the constructive materials. These were two identified priorities, as was mentioned by your colleagues, which is like existing good, we just got to push, and that's it. What are the major directions which will trigger, as you mentioned, at least the beginning of the reform, the structure of the Georgian economy?
I think one of the most important things that we analyzed the import structure of Georgia, and we understood what do we need to to maintain the growth level that we have today. And these two sectors became it's easy to say, but easy picks, because they are quite evident. The amount of import that we use for these sectors is quite big. On one hand, we import around 1.9 billion, on the other hand, 1.1 billion. So the figures are quite big, and we, on the other hand, we clearly see potential. I mean, if you go back a couple of years ago when Enterprise Georgia launched certain policies on supporting agriculture, since then we see number of investments being done in this sector. We see huge companies entering agribusiness, which have never done it before. So this is already a big move in this sector. And I think the sector is already changing, but we still, when you look at the figures, you still see that land plots are very small, which hinder productivity growth. You cannot grow productivity on a very small parcel. So I think the structural change that government has enacted, being that they will start registering land, which has been a problem in Georgia for years now, will be another boost for this industry, because we see there is demand for agriculture from the investor side as well. So I think there is a big growth to generate in this industry, but in the right way.
IFIs. I followed your participation on the panel, which was, I think it was done by Mamuka Tsereteli and America-Georgia Business Council. You were represented with various stakeholders, but Mercedes Vera Martin was also a part of it. That was the beginning where you offered, let's discuss it while publishing it. What's the feedback what you and your team personally have in regards of this survey? Because it's bottom line, while having common discussions with those with whom we follow all the steps in regards of economic or financial reforms.
It's very important that private sector or the government talk the same language as IFIs. So basically, when we had this opportunity to be on the same panel with Ms. Vera Martin, it was a pleasure discussing with her, and we understood that she had the same vision as we had in Galton Taggart. So basically, we coincided on these ideas, and then we started talking. And that's when I proposed to her that, listen, we're going to do a bigger event in Georgia, and we'll be just honored to have you on board. And she accepted right away. So obviously she's an open-minded person, quite easy to contact. So she accepted right away, and then we communicated with her, and we understood. And it wasn't only the IMF; it was also EBRD as well, with Katarina as well, World Bank. So it's very important that the ideas which are generated by the private sector and by the government be approved by IFIs, because IFIs have been playing a very crucial role in Georgia's development throughout the years. And I think when we talk to them, Georgia is presented as one of the best pupils in the region when dealing with IFIs, and one of the examples of this success is the way they treated Georgia throughout the crisis. So I think Georgia was one of the first to safeguard the financing for all the year. So this is a very important thing that is very important to keep on discussing with these people, because besides just knowing them, it's very important to understand their view, because there's one thing when Georgia looks at the regional scale, but their vision is global. So I think it's very important to understand their guidelines as well.
Lothar, thank you so much. Our viewers and followers will have a chance to follow again this very interesting panel. Thanks again for inviting me on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, the COVID-19 is being felt globally across different operations. Companies and corporates are trying to assess the reallocation of supply chains, and maybe there will be a refocusing into more regional supply chains. The way we see it is that probably it is premature to assess the full impact of what is happening, and we are monitoring how the corporate sector is reassessing the reallocation of their operations. In this regard, there is a parallel process, which is a process that started with deglobalization or questioning the value of globalization. And that could be accelerated as a result of the shock. So is it possible that the supply chains become more regional? Yes, I think so. There is a risk there. And I think we will need to think also about the implications in terms of paying some premium for holding capacity at the regional level. In this context, I think that Georgia has some potential to be part of these regional supply chains, not only because of the logistical location of Georgia, but also because of, as you mentioned, the free trade agreement with Europe and China.
I really agree with Mercedes, what she just said. And to add, I think there will probably be, depending on what the company's profiles are, supply chains may become much more localized to ensure that there is always supply. The other option is, of course, to diversify supply chains much more than you have today. If you're a very big company, this is possible. To diversify supply chains not only over different countries, but possibly also over different continents to ensure that you have uninterrupted supply at all times. Your choice of path here probably depends on the size of the company, where you're based, your sector, and so forth, and also your financial strength. But it's interesting options because they're completely opposite. So I think we all wish we had a crystal ball. We don't. But it will be interesting to read about this period and the development over the next couple of years in times to come.
Yes, I think we'll see some reconfiguration. It's not going to be in the short term. Global value chains are sticky. That's why we actually see the problems. If they were not sticky, then people will immediately move to the next supplier, but they are. Investments are customer specific, businesses are firm-to-firm relations, so it will be some time before these changes are actually taking place, and they can go in various directions with, as I said, reconfiguration in some way. Global value chains were actually slowing down even before COVID. As Mercedes mentioned, we were in an era of deglobalization already, so trade policies are not really the most conducive towards value chains. And also we have automation and 3D printing. So that's also something that people feel is a threat to value chains. Again, our recent research shows that actually automation and 3D printers increase trade. So a lot of unknowns, but we are likely to see some changes in investment patterns going forward. I can just say who's going to benefit. Probably countries that are open to FDI, countries that are open to trade, countries that have political and macroeconomic stability and have a predictable business environment. And of course, we should not forget about the role of comparative advantage in all of this. So Georgia meets a lot of these things. You can attract some of this investment, but whether it will make the full list of things, or we should concentrate our efforts, I'll leave that discussion for the next.
Georgi, to build some more on FDI analysis, EPRC has recently issued a very interesting study on COVID-19 era and investment perspectives. There is no doubt that in 2020 the rate of economic growth in the world will be significantly reduced, which will be especially painful for developing and less developed countries. Closing borders by countries, suspending economic activities and disrupting or postponing important international or local events will definitely reduce the rate of economic growth, and Georgia is not an exception. Unfortunately, statistics of investment flow of the first quarter of 2020 already indicates that compared to the same period of the previous year, FDI decreased by 42%, most severely affecting tourism and transportation sectors, which represent the major contributing sectors to the Georgian economy. This downward trend, on the other hand, increases the competition on the international investment market, and the Georgian government will have to make additional efforts in order to attract already limited foreign investment resources to the country. So
which factors create a favorable environment for investment? We've heard one answer to this question from our panelists and IFIs, but to summarize once more: first and foremost, stable political situation, protection of private property, fair juridical system, favorable tax regulation, cheap and qualified labor force, predictable economic environment and economic openness of the country, natural resources, strategic geographic location, free trade regimes, low level of corruption, and country-specific attractive futures. If we look at Georgia, some of these factors are definitely and already in place, but most of them still need to be fundamentally improved. And if we look at major findings and recommendations of the EPRC research you have been referring to, it's easy to notice, Elena, that most of these recommendations are concentrated around such areas as comprehensive legal framework. So strengthening small and medium-sized enterprises, technological and logistical development, and for sure, educational system.
Yes, more on COVID-19 challenges and combating these challenges. The checkpoints went out and visited EPRC on their own premises. With these recent reports on most probable coronavirus second wave, post-crisis period might take longer than most of us have anticipated. One of the research organizations in Georgia focusing not only on local but global context as well is definitely EPRC. So we have come to ask them several questions. Irina Gurul from EPRC is waiting for us. Hi Irina. What are some of the main tendencies that still remain, in your opinion, till today?
So what we see and what the lessons learned are is that economic structure should be as diversified as possible. Also, given that small and medium-sized enterprises, which are not very stable and sustainable in reshuffling their managerial practices and the ways of doing business, it has been quite hard for them to reorient and restructure their activities.
So what do you think Georgia's post-crisis economy might be?
So we see some tendencies of moving closer to European borders, value chain production. So here we have to position ourselves as a strong economy, resilient economy, also strong in terms of democracy, rule of law, independent judiciary. Next year and this year might be quite harsh. The shrinkage will be about 5%, as we see in most of the prognosis given by international organizations. So the future outlook should be focused on the global perspectives.
Hi guys, the checkpoints is here. How are you?
Thanks, how are you?
Fine. So what are you doing here?
We're working on fourth issue of the American interest.
Is it the Georgian interest as well?
Yes, of course. This magazine is all about the Americans and how Americans see the world, and we would love to just give more information and more education and more experience to the Georgian readers to get this experience from the first hand from these world-class intellectuals.
Ani, more on this point. What do you think is the main goal of this publication?
Considering the current media climate of Georgia, where we have an overwhelming volume of disinformation, I think it's important that we have a journal that creates content based on critical thinking, analysis, correct factual information. We have authors that have been winners of Pulitzer Prize and Nobel Prize. We have scientists and writers from all over the world. I think we've already sent the journal to over 30 regional centers and organizations across Georgia. I think one of the greatest achievements is that we also sent the magazine to 14 penitentiary facilities so that people there have access to the information presented.
How does this journal and everything else ties into what you are doing with EPRC?
As Anna mentioned, we're doing all these different parts from economy to education, from education to democracy, because we strongly believe that Georgia is one of the trendsetter in this region, you know, and if Georgia is going to be surviving this battle for freedom and democracy, then our neighboring countries also follow us.
Wonderful. Let's hope that it happens the way Nino just said. Not to go too far, Georgi, I have one more. Yes, yes, definitely. but I'm back in the studio with you. So I have one more very interesting interview for our viewers. We always talk about the importance of regular communication between public and private sectors, and especially during the pandemic, listening more to the business community is crucial to really address the true needs that COVID-19 has brought to the table. UGBC was the association that initiated a roundtable between these two sectors. The meeting was named very simply Dialogue with Business.
I do remember, yes, I remember, and we have been covering the event on our media platforms. Deputy Ministers of Finance and Economy, if I'm not mistaken, as well as the head of Labor Inspection Department at Ministry of Health, Mr. Peradze, Beka Peradze, and the Director of Agency, Enterprise Georgia. They met with representatives and top management of UGBC, member companies and partner business associations at this meeting.
Yes, exactly. Updated programs by the government of Georgia to support business, new challenges faced by business sector due to COVID-19 pandemic, necessary activities and additional steps in order to minimize the losses and recover the economy, monitoring implementation of recommendations given by the Ministry of Labor and Health of Georgia, and the new prospects of business development. All of these were the main issues discussed during the meeting. One initiative that caught my ear was that the business asks for a one-year moratorium on new regulations. Sviet Jumburidze sat down with the checkpoints. Let's talk about the initiative that we heard on your this big gathering and dialogue of business, facilitating dialogue between business and the public sector. And there we heard this one initiative from the business community to have at least 1 year moratorium on regulations, on new regulations.
3 ministries participated in this, let's say, event. Ministry of Economy, it was Deputy Minister level, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Finance. At the same time, somewhere around 45 business companies participated in this roundtable. During this gathering, it was very interesting topic, penalties during regulation period, you see. What is important that, okay, we fully understand that COVID-19 needs strict, let's say, regulations, strict, let's say, recommendations, and to follow this recommendation from business companies' side. But at the same time, we should mark one point. For example, the penalties is around 10,000 lari. So I know more than 6 companies, and they are members of EU Georgia Business Council, which already in process of these penalties. 10,000 lari. Just imagine, Elena, if they pay 10,000 lari, and most of them, they are from HoReCa sector, let's say restaurants. If the owner of the restaurant is paying, for example, price of rent, company is paying for salaries of the let's say, staff members, utility fees, and plus this big, let's say, penalty, 10,000 lari. So we initiated and asked the government, and we received a promise from the Deputy Minister of Economy that they will raise this issue during Coordination Council's meeting, that it's necessary to abolish and reschedule this regulation. I mean, let's say, high fee penalties. First of all, it's necessary to...
What was the reason for these penalties? It was some kind of misinterpretation of guidelines, or avoiding the guidelines? Because on the other hand, there is a situation with pandemic. COVID-19 hasn't gone anywhere. We don't have a vaccine. And of course, that kind of caution is really important.
Unfortunately, the regulations and guidelines, you see, does not give full information to let's say, business community. That's why sometimes they are making mistakes. We can, fix some, let's say, small penalties, like 500 lari or maximum 1,000 lari at the beginning. And if they do not follow the regulations, then you can, let's say, penalty for a, let's say, big amount. unfortunately, COVID-19 practically stressed and depressed psychologically business community. This also plays very important role. I say
so
that,
you mean expectations?
yes, also expectations. Unfortunately, business community, we don't have any position to have clear predictability process.
But this is a global
yes,
problem.
this is global.
Yeah.
But okay, if we take, let's say, European Union, some other countries, okay, let's see, these countries, they have, I mean, European Union member countries, they have reserves, special, let's say, state reserves, and even for them it's not easy to somehow to preserve the stabilized situation, but anyway, they can somehow preserve. But what is in Georgia? Frankly speaking, we don't see some positive results, unfortunately, of this, let's say, support, and at the same time, we don't see clear vision and clear, let's say, action plan from government side.
We are talking about anti-crisis plan, now we're talking about the post-crisis plan. I agree with you, we do not know whether all these help from international experts will translate into a specific action plan. This is not clear at this point, but at least we hear some of the, how to say, contours. Yes, because government is also talking about this renewed investment plans, a lot of plans around us. So where do you see these holes that you are just
Elena, when we sent the
mentioning?
package of recommendation to government, and also we sent these recommendations to Investors Council, and which is chaired by Prime Minister of Georgia.
What is the main
and
recommendation?
you know that we are members of Investors Council.
Yes.
So when we sent, one very important point was in our recommendations that to accumulate all finances in COVID-19 fund, and also to invite
businesses also.
Yes, exactly, and Elena, to invite, okay, governmental structures, they should control and they should spend the money. This is no doubt, this is definitely obligation of the government, but also to invite one or two or maybe three representatives from business community, let's say from business associations, and in cooperation with this, let's say, group of, let's say, business community, somehow to, let's say, strictly, let's say, arrange this action plan of spending money, you see.
Yeah, not to have questions like, for example, why developers, helping developers with subsidies and not helping more HoReCa sector, which got the first blow of COVID-19.
Elena,
right?
that's why I say, first of all, communication, dialogue with business. This is very important. Government should listen the voice of the business. We are ready for cooperation.
Do you think this action plan should be ready?
You see, if you ask me very quickly,
yesterday?
Let's say today, tomorrow, why not the day after tomorrow, maximum?
What is the role of the Investors Council that you just mentioned? Do you guys meet up? Is it like on a regular basis? Is this the platform where you have this communication? Because that's initially was set up because of the communication means as well.
So the initiative of EBRD, Elena, was very correct and in time when they initiated the Investors Council's establishment. When we started at the beginning, it was much more, let's say, effective. We sent this initiative to Prime Minister's office to establish the council, Business Development Council, where all these institutions, I mean 5 ministries plus several business associations and plus several representatives of businesses by sector.
Broader than Investors Council.
Yes, we'll discuss concrete issues, concrete, let's say, initiatives, and we'll adopt and, let's say, support concrete.
Do you have feedback on that?
No, unfortunately, no.
Not yet.
Because such kind of council definitely will give very positive and very good results.
Is it a substitute to Investors Council?
No, no, absolutely. It will be independent body. And what is important that we initiated also to, let's say, to transfer COVID-19 Foundation Fund under the patronage of this council. This will be another chance and another opportunity for government, for business community to control and to be, let's say, more actively involved in process of spending of these finances, which are, let's say, accumulated in this, let's say, foundation, COVID-19 Foundation.
Thank you for this news, very interesting news. We'll be, of course, monitoring this process, and thank you for taking our questions.
Thank you.
Business development is essential, especially in these hard times. We're here to voice their challenges and success stories, and as mentioned earlier, the more the local production, the better, and this is also COVID-19's emphasis. Salome Chipashvili and Made in Georgia.
Yes, Georgi, showcasing locally produced toilet paper, a product which was in a very high demand at the very beginning of the pandemic. It still makes me laugh when I remember all the jokes on Facebook and beyond.
Yeah, this was quite a crazy turn indeed for the early stage of COVID. Let's give floor to the business that's done and produced, and in Georgia.
A manufacturing company for hand towels and napkins. We came up with the idea in 2013. A year and a half later, we brought the idea to life and bought the machinery. We issued our first production line in 2015 and started reaching out for bigger trading chains on the Georgian market. Initially, we invested about $500,000 into our factory and kept investing more as the years went by. Thanks to this diversity of machinery we have today, we can proudly say that our range for trade is vast. Our production goes into many directions, such as HoReCa and our retail chain. As for the range of our manufactured products, I would say that we are capable of fulfilling any request regarding paper. Our production ranges from low-segment paper towels and toilet paper to high-segment products. If we were to put all of our resources to use and maximize the workload, the weight of the manufactured products would exceed 120 tons. Initially, our team consisted of 20 members. Today, there are 100 of us. Moreover, we have invested in new machinery, which will help fulfill the demand entirely in Georgia while replacing imported products at the same time. Our goal is to establish affordable prices. Compared to our competitors, there is a 25% difference. Although our competitors are mainly foreign companies that import their products to Georgia. Thus, we think it's the best that Georgia-based manufacturing companies join each other in replacing imported goods. In the future, our company plans to diversify our production lines. At this very moment, we are actively engaged in producing domestic chemical substances. The company also plans to issue its own line of soap, branded as O-Ray.
So, Elene, time to look at what Maria Madamia has pulled together for us just for today.
Mano Kavtaradze's Pankisi camping founded in 2018.
Yes,
very interesting.
yes, to share Pankisi, gorgeous natural beauty with people from, well, around the world.
Yes, and proving women can make it well in adventure tourism.
Mano Kavtaradze from Pankisi Gorge and the Forbes 30 under 30.
The world already knows Pankisi, without, unfortunately, in the negative sense. Now is the time for that to change. The history of Pankisi Gorge, ancient churches and castles, the Caucasus Mountains, waterfalls and rivers and lakes, flora and fauna, and most importantly, people. Their traditions cuisine and culture mean that Bangkisi can become a world-famous tourist destination. Because I saw the need for myself here. 1 year ago, I founded the NGO Youth for Bangkisi Development. I'm not just doing tourism, I'm trying to strengthen links between ethnic Georgians and Kis. I want to show Georgians that Kis are our people. They have 200 years of coexistence with us. We share a common past, traditions, and customs. Kis are very hospitable people, and we hosted about 300 visitors last season. 80% of them were Georgian citizens. Fortunately, the demand is quite high this season as well. As for foreign countries, we have the majority of visitors from European countries. Adventure tourism, this is an area where you can constantly be active, meet interesting people, making new contacts. Here I can reveal the maximum of myself. Now, when I am already in the field, I know that I will always be happy to do this work with full creative ability and without boundaries. In order to develop the camp, I needed to study more. When I got involved in adventure tourism, I knew that with this business I could benefit my country's economy more than I worked in an office. And yes, I do believe that adventure tourism will take an important place in the Georgian economy. It will take years, but it's achievable. We have all the conditions to develop adventure tourism at the highest level.
So, BMG signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the UN World Tourism Organization. I had to say this, Georgi. Okay. I'm so excited about this further cooperation with the organization that has a very big weight, especially today, when COVID-19 has given the harshest blow exactly to this sector, and not only locally, but globally as well.
I knew you would be the one to take the lead in communicating this exclusive news for our viewers and followers. I mean, the checkpoints for sure already. I'm really pleased that we made it happen, and Zura Pololikashvili has signed MOU with BMG personally in face, as we'll be watching just in few minutes or seconds. This is a part of what we have been up to lately. We plan to cross borders and to go global. The checkpoints is also part of this strategy. For me personally, it's the checkpoints of this strategy.
Let us watch an online signature of MOU between BMG and UNWTO. Personally, to me, one more story how COVID-19 can be viewed not only as a challenge, but as an opportunity as well. So good job, Georg.
Okay, Mr. Secretary General, thanks again for this opportunity and for finalizing between our teams the Memorandum of Understanding, which brings tremendous opportunity to Business Media Georgia and its team to promote World Tourism Organization, not just guidelines, which is just an actually ongoing things happening, but all the values coming from the organization, from your team, personally from you, and it's going to be our honor to distribute within our common partnership all the news things happening around, and I still hope that you as an organization representing more than 500 just affiliate members worldwide within the private sector, and it's just encompassing 164 countries, educational institutions, tourism associations, is going to be huge impact for us, and I do hope that our input's going to be quite essential and important for your organization and personally for you. Thank you for this opportunity again.
Thank you, dear George. We are very happy to start this kind of collaboration because, as we know, Georgian Business Media Georgia is one of the leading media partner and leading media source in not only in Georgia, in the region, in Caucasus and outside of Caucasus. So we are really happy to start this kind of collaboration. This is first time when we are signing this kind of friendship in the region. Unfortunately, we wanted to do it presentially in Georgia, but I'm sure that at the mid of September we will be there we will have one of the most important events after COVID period. Unfortunately, we couldn't organize presidential event under our flagship, under UNWTO leadership, and this will be first place. And of course, most important thing, an issue will be discussed there will be the future of tourism. And this is coincidence that it will happen in Georgia, and we are expecting numbers on around 35 different delegations from all over the world. There we can sign again this document presentially, but let me to do it this hot summer day during COVID, signed via tele-signature, let's say, and then we will celebrate it during our visit in Tbilisi.
Thank you so much, and we can now proceed with the signature. There is another point which is a part of the virtual ceremony, and it's like this. It's considered like a handshaking so far and confirmation of our friendship. Yeah. Thank you and good luck. Thank you and good luck.
This we will celebrate with nice Georgian wine in Tbilisi, and see you in September. Thank you for your collaboration and wish you good luck. All the best to Georgia, to Georgians, to Georgian tourists. And I hope very soon we all, not only Georgians, but all the world will become at the same number, same situation, which we've been 3-4 months ago.
Thank you, and good luck. Thanks again. Good luck to WTO. Thank you. Bye.
So, keeping fingers crossed, this will be a successful cooperation, although I know it'll take more than just crossed fingers. Time to wrap up the checkpoints and wish you a great week ahead.
Yes, and to show you how the world business community will be working next week around the globe, we'll be leaving you with the global agenda of what the world businesses week might look like next week.
See you soon.
Here is what you need to know to start your week. Approximately 32 million Americans on unemployment benefits are currently receiving $600 per week in expanded jobless benefits, but this is due to expire on July 31st. The Fed will probably sit on its hands at its July 28-29 meeting after already slashing interest rates to nearly zero and pledging unlimited financial asset purchases. Officials are likely to reiterate guidance that rates will remain near zero until the economy gets back to normal. The rally on Wall Street that has brought the Standard & Poor's 500 to nearly 5% below its record high reached in February, and seen the Nasdaq gain more than 15% year-to-date will be tested this week, with dozens of major companies reporting earnings. Facebook is due to report on Wednesday, while tech bellwether Apple along with Alphabet and Amazon are due on Thursday. Other companies scheduled to report include pharmaceuticals, Merck, Pfizer, as well as McDonald's, Procter & Gamble and Starbucks. Results from energy giants ExxonMobil and Chevron are due out Friday. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft and Google, the 5 largest US stocks, now account for 22% of S&P 500's market capitalization, analysts at Goldman Sachs say in their recent report. The US Commerce Department is due to give its first take on second quarter GDP on Thursday, with analysts forecasting a brushing 35% annualizing decline during the 3-month period, while data on Monday is expected to show another increase in durable goods orders. Thursday figures on initial jobless claims are expected to remain elevated. Figures from Germany on Thursday and the wider Eurozone on Friday will show the extent of the economic contraction caused by lockdowns during the second quarter. Germany's economy, the Euro's largest, is expected to contract by 9%, while the Eurozone is set to slump 12%. The Euro hit 21st highest on Friday after the European Union set aside differences and agreed a COVID-19 recovery fund.